is Encore.
Cool.
The stories behind the songs.
Thank you.
Here's iHeartRadio's Miles Galloway.
Let me guess, you saw my face in a crowded place and you don't know what to do? Let me help. I'm Miles Galloway, and this is the story of James Blunt's You're Beautiful. You're beautiful. What would you say is the worst song ever written? Like the absolute worst tune of all time that you and everybody you know hates? I know it's a completely subjective question, and there's almost no way to get a general consensus, but a lot of people sure think it's You're Beautiful, the 2005 single by English singer-songwriter James Blunt, largely down to the fact that you just couldn't avoid it. When it was released almost 20 years ago, it was everywhere. The Gap, the grocery store, your dentist's office. They were all playing it round the clock. And when that happens, it's kind of easy to hate on something as simple as a song, especially a romantic ballad that's as sappy and sentimental and innocent as You're Beautiful. But that's where the problem lies. James Blunt's much maligned mega hit, a song that was virtually #1 all over the planet and likely in other galaxies, wasn't a sappy, sentimental and innocent ballad. It wasn't even romantic. Now you might be saying to yourself, what? Are we talking about the same song? How is that possible? He's literally serenading a woman he finds beautiful. Well, I'm here to tell you that You're Beautiful is a song with layers to it. Layers that will completely change the way you listen to it. So sit back, buckle up, and let me tell you how. A couple of shocking details to get out of the way before we get into James Blunt's life. First off, his last name isn't actually spelt B-L-U-N-T. It's spelt B-L-O-U-N-T. But it's pronounced the same. So don't start calling him James Blount. Secondly, James is a direct descendant of King Henry VIII. Kind of. He's reportedly related to Bessie Blunt, a.k.a. Elizabeth Blunt, mistress to arguably the most infamous British king in history. The affair occurred while Henry was married to Catherine of Aragon, one of his wives who didn't have her head chopped off. Bessie gave birth to a son out of wedlock. I think this is what we call royalty. His name was Henry Fitzroy, who would become Duke of Richmond and Somerset. And somehow, James Blunt shares blood with those people. I think that has to be the oldest tale we've ever told on Encore. Anyway, back to slightly more recent times. James Hillier Blunt was born on February 22nd, 1974, in a military hospital at Tidworth Camp, an army base in Hampshire, England, where his father, Charles, a helicopter pilot and colonel in the British Army, was stationed. His mother, Jane, meanwhile, opened up a ski chalet in the French village of Maribel. James was the oldest of 3 kids and only son, with 2 younger sisters who grew up in Hampshire in a village called St. Maryborn. But with his dad in the army, the Blunt family would regularly relocate every couple of years to a new home, which made James an official military brat. Which I don't believe has anything to do with Charlie XCX's whole Brat Summer brand. See our recent Charlie XCX episode of Encore for some clarification on that. But I digress. James and his family would move to various spots across England, Cyprus, and even Germany. My favourite locale, however, was a village in Norfolk called Clay next the Sea, where James's parents owned Clay Windmill, a 19th century windmill that was converted to a hotel and inherited following the death of James's grandfather, Lieutenant Colonel Blunt. I can't imagine owning a windmill, let alone growing up in one. In a piece for The Guardian, James would describe his childhood as incredibly fun and hearty, but added that it wasn't luxurious. On holiday, the family would visit a tiny cottage that had no electricity or heat or water, which he compared to an oversized shed. But because they were always on the move, at the age of 7, James was sent off to boarding school, which was subsidized by the army. Then he quickly became both independent and, as he says, emotionally stunted after being away from his family for months on end. James took an interest in music early on, playing the violin and piano at a young age, and eventually took up the guitar. When he couldn't find enough friends to form a band, he decided to become a singer-songwriter. Like his father, James also enjoyed aviation and earned a fixed-wing private pilot license when he turned 16. And like his father, he joined the military, following a tradition that had been in his family for more than 1,000 years, since the 10th century, in fact, when his Danish ancestors arrived in England. Now, that's quite the family tradition. But first, James studied aerospace manufacturing, engineering, and sociology at the University of Bristol, earning his undergraduate degree in 1996, which was sponsored by the British Army. Still, music was his true passion, writing a dissertation at university titled The Commodification of Image, Production of a Pop Idol. Upon finishing school, James trained at the famous Royal Military Academy Sandhurst before transferring to the British Army Training Unit Suffield in Alberta, Canada for 6 months to learn combat. Then in 1999, he joined the Lifeguards, a cavalry regiment of the army that sent him to Kosovo as part of the United Nations peacekeeping force. This proved to be the most important period of his military service as he rose to the rank of captain and led a battalion of 30,000 troops into the capital city, Pristina. At this time, Russians had seized control of the city's airport, and a conflict developed between Russians and NATO troops. Did James Blunt prevent a war from happening? Some might say he did. Even while stopping a war in Kosovo, James earned a reputation for his musical abilities, writing songs and performing concerts for his troops. He even used his guitar to decorate the outside of his tank. How rock and roll is that? After his service in Kosovo, James was posted to the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment for his final 6 months of ceremonial duty. This decision allowed him the freedom to pursue his music career. His day job would be marching around Buckingham Palace, while at night he would play his songs in pubs and at open mic nights. Doing this allowed him to become more comfortable performing on stage while making contacts in the music biz. As a member of the Queen's Guard, he stood at the coffin of the late Queen Mother when she lay in state in April 2002. In fact, that wasn't the only run-in James had with royalty. He once served in the same regiment as the former Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. In fact, James was Harry's superior. He would tell talk show host Jonathan Ross, "He joined a little bit after me, so there was a time when Harry would call me Sir, perhaps." Imagine getting to boss around a real-life prince. After 6 years of service, James finished his duty with the Lifeguards to pursue a very different career. Here's James talking to Hannah Sung of Much Music about his time serving in the British Army.
It was just a job for me. I was in there for 5 years, and I was there because they paid for my university tuition fees. At the same time, I was really glad I went there and did the things that I did. We were involved in some amazing things. Some of them weren't that pleasant, but all of them were a good education and eye-opener in their own right. But as I say, it was just a job, and I'm a normal person underneath it and still a human being, so it's not the be-all and end-all.
But just before James left the army, James managed to get his music into the right hands, setting the stage for his career path. James left the British Army on October 1st, 2002, after serving 6 years. I suppose if this were sports, you'd say he was a free agent at that point. But there was only one team James was signing with, and that was the music team. While he was still serving, James made a demo and met someone who just so happened to be the roommate of Todd Interland, then manager of Elton John. Interland heard the demo and was impressed. He would tell Polestar, "When I listened to the demos, I called him up immediately. In fact, I was driving my car in London on a rainy night and I pulled over, and luckily he had written his cell phone number down on the CD itself. I called him up and said, 'Listen, I don't know who you are, but we've got to meet.' The two of them met the next day at a pub in London, and just like that, James Blunt had a manager. One of the first orders of business was to change his name. While his name was always pronounced Blunt, he found that people seemed to get it wrong, so he removed the O from his last name to avoid any confusion. Years later on Twitter, James confirmed, "My real name is James Blunt, but I changed it as people teased me that it rhymed with count." But here he is on Much Music, explaining the change to host Matt Babel.
Yeah, my real name is spelled Blount, and it's pronounced Blunt though. And if I said to you, no, Blount, you would say exactly something weird, wouldn't you? So I'm just keeping it simple for you.
And just to confirm, Blount remains to be the legal spelling of his last name. The next order of business was to get a record deal. Now working with Elton John's management company, 21st Artist, James secured a publishing deal as a songwriter with EMI, which gave him some money to put together a backing band and play some more gigs. But getting a label to sign him as a recording artist wasn't so easy. Record labels weren't interested. Only Virgin Records offered him a deal, but it hinged on James making one little change to his music. Well, actually his voice, which they felt was too posh sounding. Now, I get that all the time. As soon as they started asking him if he could do any accents, James's manager grabbed him and said, "We're out of here." As he would tell Guy Raz, host of the Great Creators podcast, having a posh or well-to-do accent can often rub some people in the UK the wrong way.
You know, there's a thing, isn't there? The working class hero is a thing, and I get that. And you know, and I don't sing songs that are relevant to that either. You know, I don't sing about how tough I've had of a background, because I haven't. I've been very fortunate. You know, as I say, my dad in the army. You know, I can sing about being nomadic potentially, but certainly not having a tough time. And so yeah, so there's a thing in the UK, and we have a little bit of a chip on our shoulders about it.
Instead of playing the waiting game, James decided that his next move would be to fly to America and play some shows at the South by Southwest, a music festival in Austin, Texas, known for showcasing the world's most promising new artists. It was there that James crossed paths with Linda Perry, one of the most in-demand songwriters of the time, not to mention the person behind the 1990s hit What's Up by Four Non-Blondes. You know, the song, and I say, hey, yeah, 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 hey, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, what's going on? Yeah, her. Perry was also at South by Southwest and had actually heard James's demo while she had been in London. Now that sounds like destiny calling to me. When she saw that he was playing the festival, she caught one of his sets. Just hours later, James was signing a recording contract with Linda Perry, who had just started her own label, Custard Records. I've got to say, an Englishman like James ending up on a label named after a traditionally English dessert such as custard might have been a sign. Imagine Shawn Mendes signing to Maple Syrup Records. You get it. Not only would Perry become his label boss, she would also help him record his debut album. James would tell the New York Times, Linda was really my fairy godmother in the music industry. She works with all these pop divas, so I joke that she saw my feminine side. She was very keen on helping me understand what I was trying to express. Sometimes you need someone to force the artist out of you. At the age of 29, James was finally on his way to fulfilling his dream. After signing his deal with Custard Records, James was flown to LA to begin recording with producer Tom Rothrock, who had made albums with big names in alternative music such as Foo Fighters, Beck, and Elliott Smith. Recording took place at Rothrock's Conway Recording Studios, where James was joined by a number of session musicians, but he played the bulk of the instruments on the album, including more exotic instruments like marimba and mellotron. Impressive. One of the songs, though, James recorded in the bathroom on his own, as one would do in the loo. But it wasn't just any bathroom. It was the bathroom of actress Carrie Fisher, better known as Princess Leia from Star Wars. Yes, James Blunt lived with Princess Leia while he made his first album. Here he is telling Much Music's Leah Miller all about his house host.
Yeah, exactly. I lived with Carrie Fisher when I recorded the album in our house. It was a good creative house. She's a writer herself now. Mm-hmm. And I recorded one song in her bathroom.
I heard that. Goodbye, my lover.
Which is, you know, it had good acoustics, and everyone in Hollywood has a piano in the bathroom.
Now I know what you're thinking. How does some newbie musician from England shack up with an incredibly famous Hollywood star? Well, according to James, he first met Fisher in 2003 while out for dinner in London with his then girlfriend, whose parents were friends with the actress. When he mentioned he was moving to LA to make a record, Fisher insisted he live with her. In fact, during his stay, James and Carrie Fisher grew to become the closest of friends. He would even call her his American mother. He told The Guardian, I came home one night and sat on the end of her bed and we talked until morning. After that, whenever I got back from the studio, I'd go into her room to talk, no matter if it was 11 p.m. or 3 a.m. She became my best friend. And you know how celebrities often say, oh yeah, so-and-so is my bestie, my BFF, and they're often never seen together in public? Well, that wasn't the case with James Blunt and Carrie Fisher. These two were true best friends forever. Fisher even helped him decide on the name for his debut album, Back to Bedlam. James and his wife later returned the favor by naming Fisher the godmother of their first son. The godfather, none other than Ed Sheeran. Oh, and also, when Carrie Fisher walked the red carpet for the Star Wars The Force Awakens premiere in 2015, she asked James to accompany her, partly as her dog walker, but also as her confidant. Here Carrie's telling reporter Lucy Jones all about it.
I am feeling the Force, my dog has the Force, and we brought it here to be with you.
Talk to me about James Blunt. How can we do +1? It's lovely to see him.
No, I walk her dog. I walk her dog for her.
He is so good to my dog, and he's about to, be a father, so I'm going to babysit. And in that way,
I love this friendship. I love it.
But back to making the album, James credits Tom Rothrock for helping him achieve his vision for his debut album, and even for making him the artist he dreamt of becoming. Here he is speaking to Virgin Radio in the UK earlier this year.
I was working with one producer throughout the whole of the album, and he's an amazing man, a guy called Tom Rothrock, who for me is the making of me and the making of this album. His touch is very, very delicate, and I'd heard of him. He'd done Beck, recorded Beck, Elliott Smith, Badly Drawn Boy, the Foo Fighters, and others, really cool people. And he laughs now that the moment Back to Bedlam hit, all the cool phone calls ended. And the uncool musicians were the only people who might be coming to ask to work with him. But really, his touch was very, very delicate, and we spoke for hours. God, he was so patient with me. He just wanted to hear what it is I was trying to do, and so he was really trying to listen to this this young man's thoughts and ideas, and working out how to just record those in the most honest way.
After working on it for upwards of 7 months, James Blunt finally released his first ever album, Back to Bedlam, on October 11th, 2004, and it sold 482 copies in its first week. Woof. A funny thing happened to James Blunt and his debut album. After selling only 482 copies in its first week, the album sold twice as many in its second week, and then twice as many as that in its third week. Do you see where I'm going here? It just kept doubling. Despite being released during the internet age, Back to Bedlam picked up steam and started selling more copies due to word of mouth and increasing airplay for its first single, High. But it wasn't until the release of the third single, You're Beautiful, where the album began to sell truckloads. Now, You're Beautiful wasn't expected to be a hit. In fact, if you had asked James at the time which song he believed would be his biggest hit, he would have said, Goodbye My Lover. The bathroom song. He even said that. Oddly, too, because that became the album's 5th single, not the first. You're Beautiful is an incredibly simple song that James admits took him only 2.5 minutes to write. Well, maybe a bit longer, since he brought in co-writers Sasha Scarbeck and Amanda Ghost to help him finish it. But his record label loved the idea of a song coming together so quickly, and even quoted James saying it was written in only 2.5 minutes to sell the song and album at one point. Appearing on Much Music, James told the audience about how the song came to him.
The song You're Beautiful I wrote about my ex-girlfriend, and it was because I saw her on the Underground in London, and she was with her new man, who I didn't know existed, and she and I caught eyes for that second in time, and we really lived a lifetime in that second, and wondered if time and place had been different, what might have been, but we didn't do anything about it, and I haven't seen her since.
Ah, yes, the song about an old lover. That's always been a very popular topic to write a song about, and this one resonated with listeners. Now, James has never revealed who the woman is in the song, but according to internet sleuths, You're Beautiful was written about his former girlfriend, Dixie Chasey, who worked in the casting department for the Harry Potter films and the classic Shaun of the Dead. It's hard to believe, but the song actually caused a bit of controversy with the record label. In case you haven't heard the original version, which I suppose is the explicit version, in the second verse, James sings the line, She could see from my face that I was f***ing high, but the label replaced the F-bomb with the word flying for the radio edit, which no doubt helped it sell so many millions of copies. However, the album was sold with a parental advisory sticker on the front of it because of that one word. Here's another fun little fact about You're Beautiful. You may have noticed at the very beginning of the song, James sings the line, My life is brilliant, twice. Well, that was an intentional false start. He told The Guardian that it's my little joke, but I think in my elated state from whatever concoction I might have taken at the time, life did seem really brilliant. The tube certainly looked very colourful. I've always wondered why that was in there. The music video for You're Beautiful was in non-stop rotation on both MTV and Much Music, thanks to the camera not taking its eyes off James and the dramatic denouement that sees him jump off a cliff. And yes, that's really him taking the plunge from quite a steep height. Here he is telling Much Music about making it.
We pulled a few ideas together for different videos, but really Your Beautiful video, the credit has to go to the director, a guy called Sam Brown, who came up with this idea, and it's just stepping out of that kind of underground subway story and instead reviewing your material objects from your life and consigning you to nature. And he was mean enough to throw me off a cliff in the Mediterranean twice. The first time he said I was an inch too far to the left.
Come on!
He would elaborate to The Guardian, "I agreed to jump off a cliff in Mallorca. By the time I'd got there, I'd realised I'd made a terrible mistake, but it was too late to back out. They had divers in the water in case I knocked myself unconscious. I had to jump twice because the first take wasn't right, and I ended up with a split lip. It hurt, but it made a great video." Indeed it did, and in the summer of 2005, You're Beautiful reached number 1 in the UK. Canada and the US followed, then Ireland, Scotland, Sweden, the Netherlands, Hungary, Belgium, heck, even Ecuador sent it to the top of its singles charts. It was a global smash hit, well, maybe not in Italy and Spain, but everywhere else. And it boosted sales of Back to Bedlam too, making it the biggest selling debut album of all time in the UK, not to mention the best-selling album of the 2000s. On home soil, James took home British pop act and British male solo artist at the 2006 Brits. You're Beautiful received Grammy nominations for Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best Male Pop Vocal Performance. He didn't win in any of those categories, but I'm sure if you'd asked James, it was an honour to be invited. I hope he took Carrie Fisher with him. You're Beautiful was a phenomenally successful song that made James Blunt a household name, but it also made him the butt of many jokes, the target of bullying, and the voice behind what Rolling Stone called one of the most annoying songs ever. And no one knew this better than James himself. It reached a point where the song was so overplayed, he and his record company tried to get copies of the single from being made. Here he is telling Virgin Radio in the UK.
That was a very frightening moment in my life, thinking, oh God, I'm not going to be a musician anymore. I'm going to be a celebrity almost. You know, that terrible. You're going to be just more visible and people are going to want to know about personal lives and things like that. And actually, as the single started building, and as we were talking about the overplay, we stopped production of the single to try and get rid of it because because we were finding it as annoying as the public.
But it was the first song. You were the first singer-songwriter in America since Elton John with Candle in the Wind to get to number 1.
Yeah, amazing. And yeah, so it was hitting all around the world.
By the end of 2005, James had become one of the most famous musicians in the world, but also one of music's favourite punching bags.
I'm not really focusing on the notions of fame. I work hard as a musician and performing, and I work with a bunch of musicians. We tour and perform and have a relationship with an audience and us on stage, and as such, we're having a lot of fun.
Was there anything that surprised you when you did become famous?
Well, I set out to be a musician. I really didn't set out to be famous in the first place. And for me, I just do focus on that particular job. I write, I record, and now I'm on a world tour and playing out live. The elements of fame, I think, are pretty ugly. And maybe in this day and age, we do live in a kind of that kind of icon of the cult of the individual and of celebrity, and they disinterest me pretty much. So I try not to involve myself in it too much. Expected in the first place. I didn't get into music for that in the first place. It caught me by surprise, but it's really not relevant. The great bonus has come with it has been to tour around the world for 2.5 years.
Yes, that was 3 straight clips of James Blunt being asked by 3 different Much Music hosts about how it feels to be famous. Throughout the years, You're Beautiful would be called one of the worst songs of the decade, the worst song of all time, and even the worst song in the history of mankind, which I think is the same thing, just worded differently. And in all fairness, it's just not right to list You're Beautiful ahead of Crazy Frog's Axel F and Mr. Blobby's Mr. Blobby. Come on now. Needless to say, the ubiquitousness of You're Beautiful made it an easy song for the public to hate. No one could have prepared James for this. Hell, he thought Goodbye My Lover would be the song everyone would buy and then potentially later hate. Yes, James Blunt found himself in a position where he would either need to defend his work or turn on it, which is exactly what he did. He joined in on the fun and began agreeing with people that yes, You're Beautiful was in fact annoying as f***. Come 2014, James was issuing a full apology to the press for writing the song. In an interview with Hello magazine, he said he felt the song was, quote, force-fed down people's throats and it became annoying. And then people start to associate the artist with the same word. I think at the end of the day, I was marketed by a record company to appeal to women during Desperate Housewives commercials, and you lose 50% of the population in doing so. Even he called You're Beautiful probably one of the least meaningful songs on the album, and thus began the James Blunt Comedy Tour, where the singer-songwriter started showing a different side to the guy everyone thought was the sentimental type. He began dropping truth bombs about You're Beautiful and shocked many people when he confessed that it was not actually a love song at all. It was a stalking song. In an interview with Huffington Post, James expressed frustration over how his song had been so misconstrued over time. Everyone goes, "Oh, he's so romantic. I want You're Beautiful as my wedding song." These people are f***ed up. You get labelled with these things like, "Oh, James Blunt, isn't he just a soft romantic?" Well, f*** that. No, I'm not. You're Beautiful isn't this soft romantic f***ing song. It's about a guy who's high as a f***ing kite on drugs in the subway stalking someone else's girlfriend when that guy is there in front of him. And he should be locked up or put in prison for being some kind of perv. Oh boy. Can you imagine playing that song at your wedding? Huge mistake. Also, note to self, I'm getting married next year, so make sure to change our first dance song from You're Beautiful to literally anything else. Actually, James sang the song at Elton John and David Furnish's civil partnership ceremony in 2014, so make of it what you will, I guess. The success of You're Beautiful made James Blunt millions of dollars and basically set him up for life. But it also made him a target for plenty of detractors. So how did he cope with the relentlessly negative attention that came his way? He explained it on his website. How do you deal with it? Well, I think you move to Ibiza and buy a beautiful house and you go to a nightclub and you get exceptionally high and you make sure you have a great time. I did all the things that made it worthwhile. I had a fantastic, fantastic time and I made up for all that negativity. Unforeseen by just about everyone, James also leaned into social media and ended up, in the eyes of many, a Twitter legend, with his bio reading, "Proof that one song is all you need." He became quite the savage reply guy, most often at his own expense. For example, here is a great self-own. When one person tweeted, "There's a best of James Blunt? Really?" James replied, "Yep, it's called Greatest Hit." But he's also proven he can dish it out to others too, replying to a woman who tweeted, "I have an ex who loved James Blunt's You're Beautiful song and I had to pretend that wasn't embarrassing." He responded with, "A man of questionable taste in just about everything." Ooh. Sick burn, James, and just one of many he's dropped on those who try to cross him. And it appears he's not ready to slow down anytime soon. Proving he is the king of self-awareness, James celebrated the 20th anniversary of his debut album, Back to Bedlam, this year, with a proposal to all of his fans and haters out there titled, "Wanna Ruin My Life? Just Listen."
My name is James Blunt, and you have the power to absolutely f*** my life. I know you've heard the rumours, and they're true. I'm re-releasing my debut album, Back to Bedlam, on October the 11th, something that has kept me consistently rich for the past 20 years. So as a way to give back to you, my adoring public, if Back to Bedlam re-enters the charts at #1, I will legally change my name. What will I change it to? Well, that's entirely up to you.
Me?
No. I've been called many things in my life. Most hated man in pop, annoying, James Beige.
James
Rude. I'll let the people decide. But if it doesn't go to #1, I'm not changing my name. It's safe to say this is the most important democratic moment of the year.
This stunt really took off for James, maybe more than he had anticipated. The public took this challenge rather seriously, responding to him with many different suggestions of what he could change his name to. The most popular ones being the name of shamed TV presenter Jimmy Savile, yikes, the playful Blunty McBluntface, and the very obvious yet too rude to say on radio, James... Yeah, I'll give you a hint, it's often referred to as the C word that rhymes with blunt. As one might expect, most suggestions weren't flattering, but James seemed up for it, which is such a cool thing for him to do. The winner was in fact Blunty McBluntface, but in the end, it didn't matter because the re-release of Back to Bedlam only reached #8 in the UK. Here's James accepting the unfortunate news in a follow-up video.
Hi, James. The charts are in.
Okay, tell me straight.
You didn't make it to #1.
I don't have to change my name.
I am so sorry about this. I know you must be devastated.
Oh, yeah, gutted.
Listen, I know you're disappointed and I know it meant a lot to you, but please don't be upset.
I'm completely heartbroken.
But hey, I've been talking to the label and we think it might be a good time for a rebrand.
What?
Well, we're all kind of tired of James Blunt.
I'm not.
And the kids seem to really love Blunty McBluntface. I mean, it has a really nice ring to it.
F*** the kids.
Hello? Bluntface, hello?
For what it's worth, I do think Blunty McBluntface has a nice ring to it, and I can hear it now. Here to perform his timeless 2005 hit, You're Beautiful, two-time Brit Award winner, Blunty McBluntface. I'm sold. I'm Miles Galloway, and that was the story of James Blunt's You're Beautiful on Encore, with new episodes every Thursday.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more great podcasts just like these.